Hello and welcome to another of our video group tests. Today we're focusing on upmarket family SUVs. That's cars that are similar sort of size to a Nissan Qashqai. They have a premium badge on the bonnet and frankly a premium price to match. From the left we've got the BMW X2, the Jaguar E-Pace and the Volvo XC40. Now they're all brand new models, all have 2-litre diesel engines and an automatic gearbox. So they all cost between £36,000 and £40,000.
We're going to tell you what they're like to sit in, what they're like to drive, how practical they are, and how much they'll cost you to own. But before we get started, it's important to remember that if you want to buy any of these cars, you could save quite a lot of money by visiting the new car deals section of our website, whatcar.com. The prices on the screen were correct at the time this video was published, but they do change regularly. So for the latest deals, just click the link up there in the top right-hand corner.
So let's kick things off by finding out what these SUVs are like to drive. The X2 is the lowest and the lightest car here, so you won't be surprised to learn that it's the most car-like to drive. By that I mean its body sways about the least through zigzagging roads, and it's the most comfortable with quick changes of direction. Now we wouldn't say it's fun to drive, but there is at least plenty of grip. And when it comes to the steering, it's heavier than we'd like at parking speeds, but it does at least give you a good sense of connection with the front wheels when you're pressing on. BMW's 20D diesel engine is roughly on par with the others for power, but once again, because the X2 is quite light, it actually destroyed the others in our acceleration tests. It's just a shame the X2 isn't more comfortable, despite the car I'm driving here being fitted with BMW's optional £150 adaptive dampers. Even in its most comfortable driving mode, it's on the firm side for an SUV, and there's loads of road noise over coarse surfaces.
Now, although the E-Pace looks a bit like a cross between Jaguar's larger F-Pace SUV and the F-Type sports car, it has little in common with either. It's actually based on the same underpinnings as the Range Rover Evoque, and that means it's pretty heavy. It discharges that bulk reasonably well through corners. I mean, it's not as agile as the X2, but it doesn't lean too much, and the steering is sharp enough to give you a good sense of connection with the front wheels. The trouble is, the E-Pace is no more comfortable than the X2. This SE model has 19-inch alloys as standard, and as you can probably tell, the whole car tends to shimmy from side to side along any road that isn't perfectly smooth. If we're honest, it gets quite tiring quite quickly. There isn't much in it, but the E-Pace also has the least powerful engine, and when you factor in all that extra weight it has to carry around, it was unsurprisingly the slowest in all of our acceleration tests. The gearbox isn't great either because it sometimes takes ages to respond when you push the accelerator pedal for a quick burst of speed. On the plus side at least, there is less road noise than there is in the X2.
Now, if you're looking for something sporty, you might as well cross the XC40 off your list now. Those big 20-inch wheels might suggest it's some sort of mini Porsche Macan. It's actually the most easygoing car here and the most comfortable. That's particularly over potholes, where the X2 will crash into them, the XC40 glides over the top without much fuss at all. The fact the XC40 is the most wallowy in the bends won't actually worry many buyers in this class. It just never really encourages to push it hard around corners because there's lots of body lean and the steering is quite numb. You're much better off sitting back, relaxing, enjoying the comfortable ride and its punchy engine. Although we would like a little less road noise on the motorway. So the relaxing XC40 is the most pleasant to drive, with the sportier X2 running it closest. The E-Pace is no disgrace, but its average performance and that unsettled ride puts it in third place.
Now, although the XC40 is very good to drive, it's in here that it really knocks you for six. The driving position is pretty much perfect. The seats are comfortable and supportive, something Volvo always does really well, and the pedals line up neatly with the steering wheel, which is always important. The XC40 obviously isn't a cheap car, but for interior quality, it genuinely isn't far off some cars from the class above, like the Audi Q5 for instance. The dashboard materials are really classy, and all the buttons, dials and stalks feel properly well engineered. The only downer is this touchscreen infotainment system, because although it looks very smart, some of the icons are just too small, and the screen itself can also be a bit slow to respond when you prod it. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring isn't standard, but at least you can add it for a reasonable price.
The E-Pace also has a fantastic driving position. It has loads of adjustment, and like the Volvo, it has electric seats, so making minor adjustments is really easy. Now, the infotainment system is decent enough. This 10-inch touchscreen system comes as standard. But if we're being picky, it could be more user-friendly, and it's a shame you can't have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto smartphone mirroring, although you do get a really good 380-watt Meridian sound system as standard. One of the biggest disappointments about the E-Pace though is its interior. It just doesn't look or feel as special enough for a car that costs nearly £40,000. Yes, there's a bit of vinyl on the dashboard, but these plastics feel pretty cheap, and some of the buttons, particularly these on the steering wheel, feel quite flimsy too.
The X2 certainly has a classier interior than the E-Pace, and in terms of material quality and how solidly everything is put together, it's pretty much on a par with the XC40. But the dashboard is rather more conservative in its design, and if one of the reasons you want an SUV is because you like to sit quite far from the road, then you'll definitely prefer the higher driving positions in the XC40 and the E-Pace. We also think it's a bit cheeky that BMW charges extra for electric seats and adjustable lumbar support when these things are standard on the other two cars. The X2 does have by far and away the best infotainment system though. This car has the optional professional system which costs £1,260 and gets you an 8.8-inch touchscreen. But even if you stick with a standard 6.5-inch screen, it's so much easier to use than the systems in the Jag and the Volvo. You can use it as a touchscreen if you want, but when you're driving it's far less distracting to use this rotary dial between the front seats. You just twist to scroll and then press down when you found what you want. It really couldn't be simpler. The only thing you will want to add, if like me, you've got an iPhone at least, is Apple CarPlay. It's a reasonably priced option. If you've got an Android phone, then tough because I'm afraid BMW doesn't support Android Auto at all. It's that brilliant infotainment system that helps the X2 just edge our behind the wheel section, followed closely by the XC40, with the E-Pace once again bringing up the rear.
Now, as you'd probably expect, there's room for two 6-footers in the rear of all three cars. Although if you had to sit in the back on a long journey, you choose the Volvo. The X2 has the least knee room and headroom. These small rear windows make it feel the most claustrophobic inside, and it's also the most cramped on those occasions you need to put 3 people in the back.
Now it's a pity that none of these SUVs has sliding rear seats, but when it comes to boot space, the Volvo comes out on top once again. It has the largest main luggage area and there's some extra storage space under this floor. And if you add the optional convenience pack, you get this clever flip-up floor that has hooks for hanging your shopping bags on to stop them flying around.
Now the E-Pace's boot isn't much smaller than the Volvo's, but it has fewer clever touches inside, and unlike the Volvo, it doesn't have proper underfloor storage.
Now the official figures suggest the X2 has the biggest boot, but that's only if you count this huge underfloor storage area. The main compartment is actually the smallest of all 3 cars, and there's also a pretty big lip at the entrance. So if practicality is a priority, the Volvo is your best bet. The Jag isn't a bad family car, but the X2 is best avoided if you need to carry lots of people and luggage.
But what about money? Well, if you're paying cash, the XC40 will cost you the least to begin with, especially if you're prepared to haggle, because discounts of around £1,800 are already available. The E-Pace is the most expensive, and it's so new you're unlikely to get more than a few £100 off the price, even if you're a really good negotiator. Then again, the E-Pace is predicted to be worth the most after 3 years, so it won't actually cost you much more than the XC40 in the long run, even after you factor in its mildly disappointing fuel economy. Heavy predicted depreciation is the main reason the X2 is expected to work out the most expensive in the long term.
If you're buying on PCP finance, the Volvo is once again the cheapest choice. Over 3 years and with a £3,500 deposit, you'll be paying £483 a month. The BMW and the Jag will both cost you around £560. Then again, the X2's relatively low CO2 emissions mean it is the cheapest to run as a company car. Choosing the E-Pace as your next company car will mean sacrificing the biggest chunk of your salary each month.
The E-Pace might be the most expensive, but you do at least get a lot of standard equipment. It's the only one of the trio with standard adaptive cruise control and a reversing camera, for example, and it comes with the most safety kit too. Believe it or not, the X2 doesn't even get leather seats unless you pay extra, although it and the E-Pace do come with a powered tailgate, something that Volvo charges £375 for. Overall, the XC40 racks up the most stars in our buying and owning section, with the X2 impressing the least. In the end then, the XC40 wins fairly easily. It's the most comfortable, most practical, and has a fantastic driving position. It's also the cheapest whether you spend cash or via a PCP finance agreement.
Second place is a really close run thing, but the X2 just edges it. It's definitely the most fun to drive, has a great interior and a fantastic infotainment system. And if you're a company car driver, it'll actually cost you the least. However, that overly firm ride, cramped interior, and the fact it'll likely cost you the most in depreciation means it can only score 3 stars.
The Jaguar E-Pace also gets 3 stars, but it isn't without its strengths. It has a long standard equipment list which goes some way to making up for its high price, and it also holds on to a lot of its value. Trouble is, it isn't comfortable enough, and that interior just feels out of place in a car that costs nearly £40,000.
Now for lots more information on any of these cars, just head to our website whatcar.com, and as we've already mentioned, if you want to buy any of these cars, we could help you with that as well. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for a heads up on all of our latest videos.